here in the sunshine's quite a good one actually, because we're coming to that season again, aren't we, where we'll have a load of people ringing in sick with SAD. And actually, I don't, at this point, I know very little about that condition, but I can tell you what, I didn't feel very happy this morning. Not on the school run. Anyway, beside the point. So we're looking at fit for work today. So if we can just go on to the summary, what we're going to look at today is basically why it's come about. Then we're going to look at what the scheme is, the process, who's involved, the tax exemption. There's a £500 tax exemption in relation to adjustments or issues that may need to be dealt with before an employee returns to work, which I'll talk about in a minute. A couple of recent case studies, I haven't really come across many just yet. Some of our clients have started to try to use the scheme, but I haven't had any real life feedback yet. And then we were looking at the feedback that the scheme has had so far and the future. So just before I start, can I just take a quick question about, has anybody used the scheme yet? Can you answer in the chat for me? Right. So it's I don't know what the reason is that you've not been using the uh, scheme. Is it because you don't know about it, or is it because maybe it's not fit for your business, or you've not found that it's fit for your business? Carol's saying you don't know how it works yet. You've already got a link with occupational health. You've maybe not had anyone to refer yet. Okay, so there's a number of reasons, but it could be useful, and we'll come on to it. And I think it's going to be useful mainly for employers who don't have a close link with occupational health or an in-house occupational health advisor. But we'll see. Okay, so on to the next slide. So what is the scheme then? So we've been saying, what is the scheme? Well, it's a government-funded initiative, and it's delivered by Health Management Limited. So it was previously known as the Health and Work Service. Anybody who's been on any of my webinars before when we were talking about various changes and employment law updates, initially, if you remember, there was some talk about it being sort of a sick employee exchange scheme. It was only ever really mooted, but it was something that I thought was quite an interesting issue, where if you had an employee who wasn't fit to do their job, and but could still work, but not in that particular role, and another company had an employee who couldn't do their job but could do another role, then technically you could look to sort of match up the roles for sick employees to get them back into work in another role, maybe in another organisation. They didn't go that far in the end, and you'll know, anybody who's been on the webinar will remember me saying it's like a bring out your sick person trading place. Anyway, didn't come off. And it's designed to work alongside occupational health services and not to replace them. So that was the other concern. I know I work with a lot of occupational health providers, and there was a concern that they will put them out of business, but I don't think that's the case. It's another holiday pay scaremongering tactic, really. Okay, so why has it come about? So first of all, just a refresher. Some of you will already know this, others might not. So big issue for employers is long-term sickness absence. When I say long-term, we all have a different version of what's long-term in our businesses, don't we? For me, long-term is anything over 3 weeks. For the scheme now, it's anything that's 4 weeks or likely to be 4 weeks, which I'll come into in a minute. For some of my clients, long-term sick, it's not classed as a long-term sickness absence till after 2 months, 3 months. So, but in any event, it's become a massive issue for employers. Now, the questions that we're asked in the legal profession over and over again is, I've got somebody on long-term sickness absence, what can I do about that? And we say, okay, well, there's 2 things. First of all, can you try and accommodate them back into the workplace? And to do that, we then, write to the GP. Okay, what's the first step that you do? Write with a consent letter to the employee. Will they give consent for you to approach the GP for a medical report? Now, many of my clients don't like writing to individuals' GPs. I've had feedback on many occasions, and we'll keep it anonymous, that they feel that the GP simply regurgitates what they're told by the employee. They don't take an overall view, and they're happy to sign off sometimes for often longer than is necessary. Now, I haven't come across that often, but I have certainly had instances where we've been trying to accommodate people back to work, but it has ended up taking a long time. And actually, yeah, there you go, Gabrielle. Yeah, GPs tend to take a long time. Yeah, so you tend to wait a long time, and then when you get the report, it ends up being exactly what the employer's told you. And again, yes, quite a good comment there by Meg. They don't really understand the workplace. It's a general practice, and it needs to be an overall picture. So um, this became a big issue. Now, if you can't accommodate somebody back into the workplace, the other way, if you don't want to do the GP, is to go to an occupational health provider. Some people I can see from the feedback have links with occupational health, have in-house occupational health, and there are independent occupational health services to which smaller to medium-sized employers tend to refer. And I've certainly been asked to recommend providers in the past. Again, you can get the issues that arise with the GP, and also you can have the cost issue, which for a lot of small, medium-sized businesses is a massive turn-off. They're struggling with somebody on long-term sickness absence anyway, paying for replacements, don't really have the financial clout to do anything else, or they just, they don't have the time. So um, GP or occupational health to try and get them back into work. If you can't get them back into work, then we have this issue with whether you can dismiss. That's the second question that I get asked, most commonly linked with long-term sickness absence, which is, right, I'd like to dismiss. And just remember that there are only 5 fair reasons in English law to dismiss. And capability is a fair reason, and that could be that somebody is incapable of doing the job, that they're just not up to the job, and they're not performing. But it can also relate to capability to carry out the role. For example, they're not capable because of a health-related reason. So you can go down a capability route, and I would direct you to your capability procedures for long-term and short-term sickness absences, which hopefully you all have in place. Do follow the procedures consistently. That helpfully leads me on to section 98.4, because your own procedures aside, section 98.4 of the Employment Rights Act says if you are going to dismiss an employee for one of the potentially fair reasons, which is capability in this case, then you've got to act fairly and reasonably in light of the size and administrative resources of your business. And you've got to act fairly and reasonably in all the circumstances. So proportionality as well is key. So if you're a larger company, then you're obviously judged by your size and resources as to how reasonable you have to be with an employee that you're seeking to dismiss. If you're a smaller company, I'm not saying you get more leeway, but obviously your resources are more limited, so a slightly lower burden. In any event, a capability dismissal is not an easy dismissal. In order to dismiss somebody fairly, it's normally a long, protracted process. And in my experience, I don't know what your experience is of this, it normally results in a settlement agreement or a without prejudice conversation. The reason it normally results in a without prejudice conversation, I see if anybody's with me here, is because normally there is, and I say this, I'm taking out any sickness payment protection here. But because normally with individuals on a long-term sickness absence, you've got this next issue of disability. And again, just as a recap, this disability issue frightens employers to death because it's unlimited liability in damages, so that means no cap on the compensatory award, also a potential injury to feelings award, and basically it's a risky area. Disability, remember, it's not restrictive, so it's only if, under the Equality Act 2010, there is an illness which is long-term, so that can be 12 months or likely to last 12 months. So again, it doesn't have to have been there for 12 months, and it has to have a substantial adverse impact on the individual's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So not sort of grade 6 piano playing, but getting dressed, washing, getting to work. Yeah, and I think I agree with some of your comments there. I think it saves time for everybody. Yes, normally a settlement agreement, and it's the risk element, isn't it? Because with a settlement agreement, of course, you've a clean break. You do not want the comeback on a disability, a subject access request, all these things that come flying your way normally if there's an issue. And yes, I agree. I think it does reduce stress on the employee as well if it's a disability matter. And or if somebody's on long-term sick, as long as they can continue to survive financially, of course, that's often the issue. Okay, so If you don't want to dismiss, then we looked at writing to the GP using your own occupational health. Then we looked at dismissing. But if you don't want to dismiss, and this is what the government want really, they want to. Their aim apparently is to improve relationships with employees who are absent on sick leave and encourage regular and direct communications, offering the kind of support that they need to return to work. And again, I think that's a pretty nice approach for the government to take. I do know from my own experiences, and again, you've probably had the same, that sometimes when people are on long-term sickness absence, some companies, probably not you, but they do tend to lose touch with these employees. And the statistics have shown, I won't go into all these now, that people who are on long-term sickness absence with maybe a physical illness or issue, their mental health will decline the longer that they are away on long-term sick leave, which in turn creates additional problems for the employer and also prevents them from returning to work. So anyway, so that's the aim. What have they done? So in February 2011, you've got Dame Carol Black and David Frost, and they were appointed to review this sickness absence, carry out a review into sickness absence, and some of the stats that have come out of that have indicated what I've just been talking about, which are basically that it leads to long-term mental health issues, and people actually, in the main, don't enjoy being away from work. We've all had the occasional employee, haven't we, who we know is just sitting at home watching Neighbours twice a day, and he's quite happy to do so. But the majority of people do want to work. So then we progressed this to November 2011, and there was a report then called the Health at Work, an Independent Review of Sickness Absence. And that was suggesting that the government funded an assessment by occupational health providers to try and to make it the norm to try and get people back into work if they were away. Then you've got the new announcement in 2014. Then we've got the Fit for Work name. And then in December 2014, the website and telephone lines were launched, and we can start referring from now. So it's come on, I wouldn't say quickly, but it's all been a part of this red tape review and trying to assist employers. So what the scheme provides then, it's a free health and safety advice, free health and work advice from the Fitness for Work team. Now there's two ways that you can approach this. They've got a website, and I've given you the details there, or there's a telephone line. Access to this for employers is unlimited, so if you have any issues about sickness absences, people on long-term sickness absence, you can ring this helpline or go on the website, make inquiries as often as you want. Well, I've got some people typing here, I'll come back to these. Oh, Lucy says they're very helpful on the phone, so that's quite good feedback. So Lucy's obviously contacted them, and they've been helpful, so that's quite good. So we've already got a glowing recommendation for the phone line. I've been on the website, obviously, as part of researching for this webinar, and it's pretty good. There's some helpful information. I think it's always easier with these things to pick the phone up anyway, so rather than trolling the website, so that's good feedback. So you can ring them or speak to them, email them as many times as you want as an employer. And basically what the scheme provides for is a referral, a free referral for an occupational health assessment. And this is for employees who the GP or thinks might reach 4 weeks of sickness absence, or who have already been on 4 weeks of sickness absence. So the key here, when we were talking earlier on about what would you call long-term sick, well, of course they've had to go through all this. What is, is there an average? And they've decided, look, it's 4 weeks, 28 days, and it's a free referral to occupational health, basically, which certainly for smaller employers probably going to be quite useful. Okay, so the process then. Got quite a bit to say about this, and I've not split it out onto a number of slides, but if anybody's used it and you can give us any helpful information, that would be great, because I know we're all listening with and there's quite a few of us today. Is there 83 of us on here, so you can share some good practice. So basically, after 4 weeks of sickness absence, employees are referred to the Fit to Work programme, and they can be referred in two ways. So they can be referred directly by the employer, or they can be referred by the GP. So one of the questions I've had recently is, if you're the employer, do you have to tell the GP that you're referring? And the answer is no. And the risk is, of course, that there's a dual referral, but that's fine because it will be picked up apparently by the systems. But also it does get round this sort of anxiety that a lot of my employers have about, I don't want to be bothered with the GP. The feedback we've just had today, it takes too long. sick of waiting, or it's a difficult conversation. So you can refer yourselves, okay? You still need the employee's consent, so the consent has got to be freely given and informed in the usual way. So the employee still has to go through the consent process. Hopefully you've all got your consent forms, which you can just, change names, print off and send to the relevant employee. That's a pretty straightforward process, particularly if you send them, you've got the same access to medical records, literature that you send out every time. So get the full and informed consent. Um, if the GP is going to refer, the GP has got to have a reasonable belief that the employee is likely to make a return to work. So if you have got somebody who unfortunately probably will never return to work, and a number of reasons why that might happen, then they won't be referred by the GP. The employer can still refer, I suppose, if they need to know whether or not the employee can return, but probably the GPs wouldn't in those circumstances. Okay, look at that. The 4 weeks, this is the other point I just wanted to make here, that can include any period of self-certification. So if you've got a 7-day self-cert, then you don't have to have the 4 weeks signed off, basically, or fit note before you can refer. It is literally including any period of self-certification. Crikey! Anybody think I'd had a strong coffee? I have. By the employee. Okay. And what is the aim then? So what then happens is that this service are supposed to be carrying out, and I'm going to say this very slowly because I can't really pronounce it, and I'm not sure I've come across the word before, a biopsychosocial holistic assessment of the employee, which I think basically there's been a concern about the occupational health people who will be reviewing these employees and what their specialities are. And this links back into the feedback that you've just given me actually, which is that when you get a GP report, they tend to be generic, and the GP doesn't have a speciality in the workplace or the particular illness of the employee. Now we're assured that with this service, the advisors will have the relevant qualifications in relation to both physical and mental illnesses, and they will take this holistic assessment, including inquiries into the workplace, and if necessary and with the employee's consent, they are able to liaise with you directly as the employer as to what might suit the employee to come back. So, and when they say holistic, they literally mean including you as well, not just taking the employee's view, which could be quite helpful. In fact, you could probably suggest that if you're making the referral as the employee. Now, once referred, the aim is, if most appointments will be by telephone initially, and the review is to aim to return and to assess within 2 working days. So if you do have an employee who's referred, again, this goes back to the feedback that we've had, which is great about timing. They're looking at aiming at 2 working days, and if necessary, and if an employee needs a face-to-face assessment, then no more than 5 working days, and no more for the employee to travel than a 90-minute travelling time to get to the assessment, basically. What are we saying on here? We're saying fit for work, say they'll take a verbal consent. Oh, right, okay, so that's interesting. Lucy's saying they'll take a verbal consent. I think, just for the benefit of doubt, it'd probably always be good to get something in writing from the employee, but that's good to know. Let's have a look. What else? Is there another one in there? Hospitalised in France. Would I be able to refer? You probably would be able to refer for a telephone assessment, wouldn't you? I'd certainly pick the phone up, Michelle, because not everything has to be face-to-face. Yes, you can use it to back up your own occupational health advisor's opinion if necessary, or you can work in conjunction with your provider. Yes, no problem at all. So let's have a look. Yes, so when they get referred, those are the timescales, and then basically they get a case manager assigned to them as the employee. And what the case manager will do is they'll work with the employee to see if there's an issue with health, what it is, what the job role is, what the business is like, if there's an issue with the actual workplace, how that can be resolved, and then we'll take steps to come up with the employee with a return to work plan. Now, the return to work plan can be accepted instead of a fit note. So the return to work plan is the equivalent of a fit note. So if you've got somebody who's going through this process, they don't also have to get fit notes from the GP. So I thought that was quite interesting. Anyway, as I said, they can work with the employee to come up with this plan and involve you if the employee consents. But again, the employee has to consent for that plan to be released to you. So it's almost like when you get a normal medical report, the employee gets to read it first and then consent as to what bits or whether it's revealed to you. And so the plan contents have still got to be approved and consent received before it can be forwarded on to you. But I mean, basically, that's it in a nutshell as far as I can see so far. So then the idea is that with that plan in mind, the employee plans and manages the prognosis and recovery from sickness absence, and then how best to return to work. And the plan should include recommendations for adjustments and accommodations that you as the employer can make to accommodate the employee. And this could be anything, couldn't it? So if I go back to my slide about capability and disability discrimination, obviously as part of disability discrimination under the Equality Act, we've got a duty to make reasonable adjustments to accommodate employees in the workplace. This will help you as an employer to ascertain what those reasonable adjustments will be. And also you'll get a tax exemption to accommodate or to put those into place, which I'll come into shortly, which I'm not sure how big a give that is, if I'm honest, but it would prove to be some kind of a defence, I think, to a claim that you had not accommodated somebody, particularly if you went through this process. So I actually think from a solicitor's, from a health and safety viewpoint and managing sickness absence and keeping people in the workplace, it's a great idea. But from my cynical lawyer's viewpoint, it's also a great idea for my employers, because if they put this process in place and they apply it consistently to everybody who is long-term sick, they incorporate it into the policies, and you might want to think about changing your policy wording, which I can help you with if you have an issue, then you can't really be criticised too heavily, and you've taken reasonable steps to sort of resolve issues with the employee. You'll have been given the heads up about adjustments, and hopefully they will be reasonable. If they're not, at least you've been told about them and you've considered them. And this is the main area where most employers fall down in disability discrimination claims. The employee always says, or 9 times out of 10 will say, yeah, I couldn't come back to work, and you prevented me from doing so because you didn't put these things in place. Let's just have a look at the questions. Let's have a look. Will they advise if they don't think the employee will be able to return to work? Yes, I think they will advise that, and that would be in the return to work plan. I think they'd have to do that, wouldn't they? Because if there is no prospect of return, if that happened, the guidance is that you follow your own sickness absence procedure or your own dismissal procedures, and you act fairly and reasonably in all the circumstances. So going back to the first slide, what happens if the fit for work contradicts the occupational health advice? Well, I suppose that'd be a risk if you use both, wouldn't it? But it probably won't if the employee's been legitimate. I think if it was me, I'd probably use one or the other. Let's have a look. Right. Yeah, we've answered that question. Okay, so that's where we are with that. As you can see at the end of it, the employee returns to work after going through this process without having to gain a return to work note. So they don't have to get a note to say that they're fit. And then the way that you're discharged from the scheme if you're an employee is if you've returned for 2 weeks, you're automatically discharged. Or if the Fit for Work service cannot assist further, you're automatically discharged from the scheme. So I suppose going back to the question about if they're not fit to return to work, what will happen? I suppose they'll be discharged from the scheme and you'll be told that they can't help further. That would probably be one of the outcomes. Or they will just write to you to say they're not fit to return. I've not come across it yet, but I would be interested to know. So if anybody does get any answers to any of these questions, that would be great. Maybe we should run another one in 6 to 12 months' time and get all the feedback on what's actually happened. Yeah, so we've got now... Yeah, that's fine. And it can only be... Yes, it can. Right, so let's move on then. So who's eligible for the process? Okay, so eligible employees are those who are still employed, have been absent from work for 4 weeks or more, or potentially likely to be, have a reasonable likelihood of making a phased return to work, have not been referred to the Fit for Work assessment already within the last 12 months. So, yes, I was coming on to that, Gabrielle, and that's one of the downsides, I think. So you've got this 12 months again. It's a bit like, they always like to put things like flexible working requests, don't they? You can't ask twice in 12 months. I don't know why they do that, actually. In this case, it seems to me to be a bit short-sighted, but who knows? And have they provided consent? So they've got to provide the consent. Ineligible employees are those living outside England, Scotland and Wales, those who are not absent from work. So if you've got sort of intermittent short-term sickness absences, like my client who had all the students who didn't come in on a Wednesday because they had student night the night before, they wouldn't be able to be referred. Self-employed, they can't be referred if they've been referred within the last 12 months. If the employee has already made a referral, or if consent is not given. So that's quite a helpful little checklist there. That's off the Fit for Work site for you, which hopefully you'll find helpful, and I've put the little link at the bottom for you as well. Right, going on to the next slide. The benefits to the employer then, and we've sort of covered these off quite reasonably quickly, but basically what the government is saying is that they foresee the benefits to you as being, now they've taken away the recoupment of SSP, it's sort of take it away with one hand and give it back with the other. We'll try and get them back to work faster. Well, see if that works. Small to medium firms have access to this, which in previous times they haven't, or they found it difficult. It's free and meant to be a rapid intervention service based on the aims of the 2 and 5 days, definitely. I mean, if that works, that would be brilliant. And it's to support your employees, and I've put in their brackets cynically, it's also a potential defence to any claims, or it could, at least give you some evidence that you've acted reasonably. Could promote recovery and rehabilitation and prevents long-term mental illness and other social effects of a long-term sickness absence, which we've said. Okay. In addition to this, the other element that you might want to think about is that from the 1st of January 2015, if there's a recommendation made by the scheme, then you as the employer have got to fund the costs that's recommended by the professional as part of the Fit for Work scheme or any other occupational health scheme. I can see everybody taking a deep breath here. And what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we'll give a tax-exempt expenditure at £500 per employee per tax year. Anything over £500 remains liable to tax. I think I'm right in saying, though I'm not payroll expert on this, that if previously, if you'd accommodated medical treatments or other benefits, it had been had to be declared as a taxable benefit to the employee, and so the employer ended up paying tax, accommodating and then paying tax on the cost of the accommodation. It was a liability. So this is what they're trying to do here. They're trying to get around to that, saying, obviously it's not a benefit, it's a benefit to everybody, so you can have that as a tax-exempt benefit per employee per year up to £500. As I said earlier, I'm not sure it's quite the gift that keeps on giving, but who knows? And the rest of the slide speaks for itself there, really. I'm just having a quick look through it now, see if I've missed anything, but anything over and above the 500 you still would have to pay the tax on. And the exemption isn't claimed, so you just declare it. You apply it at the time that you actually put the monies through. Just apply an exemption up to £500 on the tax rather than paying the tax on it at the time it's given. Right, so very quickly then, I've put in there a couple of cases, which we'll send the slides out to you afterwards. I know some of you were pushed for time. And these are just a few extracts from the website, the Fit for Work website, and some of the examples which I thought might be interesting for you to read. It does seem to be working is the answer, and if you go on to the next slide, the feedback there we've included for you to just have a quick run through if you don't want to go through all the other literature that's on the internet about it. The GP attitudes towards Fit for Work, which I think I found quite interesting to read. Sorry, Val, I'm missing you there. It was 2015. The feedback I think is quite positive from the GPs. And actually, I've spoken to, and I do act for quite a few GP practices, and sometimes I think they are put in a difficult position with the employee because there's a lot of confidentiality. They are told one thing. In certain circumstances, they can only depend on what the employee is telling them. And like has been said before, they're not workplace specialists, so they seem to be quite up for it. Okay, so just very, very briefly to finish off then, it is still fairly new. I think we've only had one person so far I can see out of the 81 of us using it. I haven't used it yet, so this is just, I'll be able to speak probably more fully on it when I have and probably give you some really cracking feedback. Should be up and running fully by the end of 2015. We can definitely do another webinar when it is and get some feedback on that. I think it's still going to be free and government funded for now, and I think that's the idea for a very long time to come. All I would say to you is update your policies if you are going to use it, and just to show that it's there really. Certainly in our policies, we've got a clause that we put in there now in our sickness absence policies and long-term sickness absence policies about the Fit for Work service. Which is a very brief few paragraphs that give the employee and the company and the line managers who might be going through this policy or using the policy regularly information about Fit for Work, so that they can at least then ask the question, well, should we use it? And you are making them aware of it, which I think is also a useful thing to do, again, from a defending claims viewpoint. And that's it from me on that very brief half hour. We've answered questions as we've gone along. Carol, do you have suggested wording for the policies? I do have some policy wording, but it took me a while to read it out to you. Might want to email me afterwards. We can, what's this saying? Free for now. Yeah, I said free for now. I think it's going to continue to be free. There's no indication that it's going to be started charged for, but certainly if you've got employees, then you should, Is there a consent template, not specifically for Fit for Work, but certainly access to medical records? There are templates, yes there are, and actually I think if you don't want to pay for them, I think you'll be able to find them on the ACAS website, Margaret. There's some links to managing sickness absence on there, and they've got some brilliant guidance with some pretty straightforward forms on there. So I'd definitely have a look there if you're looking for some precedents. You couldn't find one on the Fit for Work. No, try ACAS, Gabrielle. You've made your own. Great. Okay. As long as it says what it needs to say, and you're sending the relevant information out, like you're telling the employee about all the rights, their access to medical records, etc. That's fine. If you've used your own occupational health provider and they have referred to the GP, does this mean you can use the service? You can't. No, I don't think it does, Sophie. I'm sorry, I can't see because I've got my contact lenses in today and it's on the big screen. This is why I keep faltering on the slides. I'm like, hang on a minute, I can't see. It's a good job nobody can see me because I'm squinting. I don't think that's a bar. No, I don't think there is a bar to referring to that service on that basis. Just shows that you've tried to do everything that you can, doesn't it? Of course, what you wouldn't want to do is harass the employee by sending them everywhere twice. I think probably make a... here we are, based on a BUPA consent form. There you go. Well, that's okay. Probably okay then, Gabrielle. Okay, anything else before I go? Okay, well, as I say, it's very new. We can only really... Yeah, there are some roadshows being done. I did notice as well on the ACAS website that I think they are running some roadshows, and that there's a charge for them. I think it's about £100 a piece. I'm not sure. You just check if you actually want to go and see a presentation face-to-face by ACAS, then that's probably a good one. But you'd have to pay for it, obviously. Okay, so right, thanks for that. Thanks, everybody. And if you've got any queries, as is usual, please do contact us. Please link in with us. Follow us on Twitter. And thanks, Liz, for having us today. Okay, hang on. I'll pass you back over to Liz. Thanks, Marie. That's absolutely brilliant. And thanks everybody else for giving their feedback and links. And a link there from Gabrielle with regards to the road shows as well that you can access. So thank you very much. Let me just move this slide on. The link for your feedback here. It would be great if you could give us some feedback about today.
And finally, next week, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but the Art of Meaningful Conversations is actually completely oversubscribed. So we are going to be running that again, but I felt I had to put it up there so you don't think I'm missing a week. However, if you would like to attend that event, just send me an email to say, add me to your waiting list, and then we can sort of look at letting you know as and when that event will run again, or if people are sort of cancelling their appointment with it. We have a three-tier employment system run by Michael the week after, and again sponsored by the CIPD North Yorkshire. So it'd be great to see you on that as well. So any other questions for Marie, I will send you her contact details so you can contact her directly. And fabulous webinar. Thank you everybody for all the input and everything that we've had there. Really, really enjoyed that. I'm sure you all did too. So look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.